Okay, we started our recording, and I'm guessing we might have a couple more joining us a little bit late, so I'll do a little bit of an intro if that's all right. Just kind of introduce myself to the group.
Yeah, go for it.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Thanks, Thomas. And thanks again for joining us. I'm
Of course.
just to give you a heads up, I'm going to have to slip out a little bit early. But I've got Rebecca coming in to sh to help you out if you need anything.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm happy to hang on for as long as we have questions. I've got no time limit today. So yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. Yeah, so my name is Thomas Gray. I've actually been with the association for 5 years now, and I've been able to do a bunch of different things at the association. I've spent some time in our membership team, our education team, our support team, and right now my position is it's called member relations, and really the purpose of it is to do stuff like this and to be an available resource for offices that are looking for a little bit more information on one of our tools or just some specific training. Um, I'll just kind of let you know right now, I do all sorts of stuff. We do orientations every week. So if you do want a refresher on matrix or exposure, you'll find the links for that right on the homepage of the MLS. So you can come see me for that. Usually those are kind of open and you can ask some questions there as well. I also do, agent team training, solo training. So, yeah, let me know if you'd like anything like that. Obviously, it's all completely free. It's just part of the membership. So, feel free to reach out to me or just ask a question if you're having trouble with one of our tools or services. I kind of covered them all. But today we're going to talk about stats primarily, what kind of stats you can generate from the tools we offer, and what stat reports we put out there, every month and every quarter. So I'll just throw my email in the chat there. Just, in case you have some questions, feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to help. All right. So I'll jump into it here. Everyone can hear me all right. Sound levels all right. You can see the screen. Just like to check before we get going. Feel free to use the chat if you'd like, or unmute yourself. It doesn't look like we're a huge session. We got some online, some in person. So whatever works for you, I'll keep an eye on both. Okay, so I think what would maybe be best to start with is to talk about all of the reports and stats that the association generates for members every month and every quarter. So there's some great links to these right on the homepage. And, the one thing I'll mention on this dashboard, and if you're not familiar with what this is the Association of Interior Realtors member dashboard. I'll also put the URL for this in the chat as well. We do have some people that have, mistakenly bypassed this dashboard and bookmarked, the MLS directly. I think this page is really, really helpful. It basically just puts all of our tools and all of our offerings to you through your membership in one place to make things as easy as possible. One thing I really like about this dashboard is it allows you to favorite tiles and kind of have them appear in this top favorite section. So when you first log in, it's the first thing you see. And so, obviously it's great to do this with your MLS, maybe web forms and some of your other tools, the member portal when you're, paying your bill, registering for education, that kind of thing. But I'd also recommend doing it with some of these resource tiles as well, especially when we're talking about stats here. So for example, there is some quick links that navigate you to the stat reports that we share through our Interlink service. And if you're not familiar with what Interlink is, if for some of our members that have been around for a bit, if you recall, there was a previous service through CREA called RealtorLink. And this was discontinued by Realtor or CREA, my apologies. And instead, they now kind of have a simplified, CREA dashboard that you probably don't end up using much anymore. And instead, we kind of had to come up with a solution on where we could house some of this information that used to go on RealtorLink, like our membership reports and member stats and our, just our general buyer survey and member benefits, everything else that we do through the association and that we offer to you is stored on this interlink. But it's a lot of stuff. So these tiles here, for example, the stats tile, the buyer survey tile, the PCC disciplinary reports tile. These are quick links within interlinks. So for example, I'm just going to favorite some of these tiles so they'll appear in my favorite section. So there we go. But if I click on the stats tile, you'll notice that it will go to our interlink service directly and just jump you to that specific page instead of landing you on the home page and you have to figure out where that tab is or where that drop down is. So I'm sure all of you or most of you have probably taken a look at the majority of these reports. So again, under the market stats section, we do uh, post a number of reports every month and every quarter. So it is broken down by our regions. So our region has obviously expanded greatly in the last few years here. So we've got our original, Central Okanagan, North Okanagan, Shuswap, and Revelstoke areas, but we've also got Kamloops, Kootenay, South Okanagan, South Peace. So you can pull reports for any of those regions. Obviously we're in the Okanagan here, and so that's going to include all of our areas. So you've got our January 2025 Okanagan report. This is where in your office would fall under. We also have our quarterly reports in here as well. You can just click the view and download link to open up any of these. So sometimes it'll just take an extra second. And let us know if you come across any of these that don't seem to be opening properly. I have encountered that a couple of times. Sometimes it just requires you to back out and refresh, but let me know. So, for example, a lot of these are actually generated by a individual that is with our association that helps put together the stats. We also work with Check Creative to just kind of clean them up a bit, make them look a little bit more professional, presentable. Some of these will kind of have some descriptions and explanations about what's happening in the industry right now. In some cases, you may notice that it's instead, uh, data pulled directly from Matrix in some cases, and in other cases, data pulled directly from our HPI service, which I'll talk a little bit about as well if you're not familiar with what the HPI or Home Price Index tool is. So, for example, I've just opened up the residential sales January 2025 summary statistics report. A lot of this data can actually also be pulled by you directly from what Matrix generates, uh, just based on agent utilization in the system. So every new listing that gets added, every unit sold, all this stuff that you see here is actually coming from the MLS system. It's just kind of cleaned up so it looks a little bit more presentable. So again, you're probably pretty familiar with these. They're broken down by property type. Um, this also combines some of the HPI stuff as well. So anytime you see this benchmark price, it's referring to that Korea Home Price Index algorithm. So if I'm not sure if I've done an HPI session with your office before, if it's been a really long time. I'll talk about it a little bit to summarize in a little bit, but I'm happy to come back and talk about HPI as well. I think it's kind of another dimension to all this, but this is not the same as average or median price. This is its own model. All right. So we also have some commercial reports that we post as well. For example, if you do work in commercial real estate at all, those are available in the stats section as well. We also have our buyer survey tile, for example. And again, I like these quick links. I think it's just a lot easier than trying to navigate through the tool, but you can obviously find all that here at the top. So we generate in the buyer survey section these reports called the home buyer stats. So I'll just open one of these up here. I was noticing earlier that some of these were taking a little bit longer, but they are here. It might even be just on my internet here. Let's see if I can get one open. There we go. Yeah, it's just a little bit slow here. So we've got the one from December open here, but obviously we have January there as well. And once again, this is kind of a prettied up, cleaned up report that goes over some home buyer stats in the in the month. I believe looking at it here, um, yeah. So we might be, I'll have to check with our communications department to make sure we're completely up to date on these. But it looks like we might be a little bit behind there. We do have one posted as of last year. It looks like we'll have to bring in the one from January 2025
Greetings,
here.
Priscilla. This is Barb.
All right.
Hi.
So I don't want to move on from Interlink yet because what I'm really hoping today is I can maybe catch some of you with something you didn't know about, something that we
Okay, I'm just
generate or
in the middle of
run
a
or
course,
have
but I'll see if I
available
can get
that
someone to
that
do
you
that. I
haven't
could see
used
a cell
before. Sorry,
phone.
am I interrupting someone's question?
Yeah.
Oh,
hmm
sorry. I think we might have someone off mute.
I'll get someone to do that. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Sorry, do you mind if I mute whoever's talking there? I think Barb. There we go. Here, I'll just take care of that. No problem. I know it
There we go.
can sometimes get clicked accidentally. Okay. One of the things that we do also run that you may not be aware of through Interlink, we've done this for years, is our membership reports. So beyond just MLS statistics and some of the stuff we've been looking at, we also generate reports based on our membership. So if you're at all curious about, what membership numbers look like at the association, who's joined and left. All these reports are completely public. You'll find them in the membership tab in Interlink. We also have actual, member count stats. So if you are interested in, for example, how your region's doing, year over year, this information is also completely available. So just good to know. Again, you may not have come across those before. In some cases, we've noticed that viewership's pretty low on those. So yeah, take a look at that. So I mentioned earlier that a lot of those kind of nicer reports, the ones that you're probably used to using, those the stats reports and the buyer surveys that we generate, it actually comes from our MLS or from our HPI algorithm. Um, and you can actually generate and pull these base reports by yourself. So kind of see what the draft was before we cleaned it up a bit and made it a little bit more concise. So what you would do in the system to find that. So I'm just on the homepage of Matrix here, is you're going to look for the market reports tab at the top, and you'll just go down to the scheduled tab. And in the view report section here, again, you'll notice that kind of similarly, it's broken down by region. So now we've got, Kamloops, Kootenay, and all the other additional regions we've amalgamated with. You will notice that there is far less historical data for these regions because we just introduced them into our MLS. They haven't been around for that long. They were in their own separate system, and CoreLogic wasn't generating these reports for them. But in the case of, for example, the Central or North Okanagan, you click the ellipses right next to the link. The link's always going to be the most recent report, so current month. And then the ellipses is going to give you the full list. So you can see we go back quite a ways, down all the way back to September of 2010. So you can run these Okanagan stats reports and take a look at the comprehensive statistics package for our MLS. And again, this includes all of these regions and both of our MLS platforms, all of the data in one report. So again, you're going to notice it's pulling these numbers directly in some cases for these buyer surveys and market stats reports. So that gives you a little background on kind of where this data is coming from and where you could actually look to see the origin of it. All right. So yeah, these are fully downloadable. You can save these. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions about them. I'm happy to chat at the end about if you came today just to ask some specific question about stats. I'll leave some time at the end. We can talk about that. So before I move on from Matrix, I just kind of want to cover everything else that's kind of available for stats and generating data and exporting data. There's a quite a bit here that I think Matrix kind of hides in some ways. So I'm going to just quickly start in the My Matrix tab at the top of the screen. I'm going to go all the way down to the very bottom to the settings section. And they just added this quick link for settings in My Matrix, which I think is great. They had it hidden in the corner prior. So we're just going to go into settings here. And under settings, there's an option called custom exports here. And I know, some of you, this may not matter a whole lot, but I always find there's some in the group that really like being able to pull data into Excel. Maybe they like generating some pivot tables and using some of the Excel tools to enhance their experience or enhance the reports for their client. Um, and it kind of looks when you're just looking at the surface of it that the export options in Matrix are kind of limited. But it's a lot more flexible than you think. So in the settings here, this custom exports actually lets you create custom reports where you can specifically place what columns and what order you'd like, telling exactly how much data in which search types. For example, you can set up custom exports specifically for cross-property searches or residential searches or commercial searches. I'll give you just a quick idea of what this looks like. So I'm just going to click Add Export there. And it just asks you to name your export, whatever you would remember or recognize for your data pull. And then you get your whole available fields list. And if you're not familiar with what that is, this is also the same list that's available when you add additional fields on the search criteria screen or when you add additional columns on the results screen. So you can just search by keyword, which is typically the easiest way to find the columns you're looking for. Most of them are intuitively named. I think there's probably a very few where you couldn't just try a couple different keywords and find it, but obviously the list is here to browse and just go through, find your fields and add them to your export fields list. As you add, I'm just going to add a bunch of random ones again. Probably won't make a lot of sense, but I just want to have a few in here. Once you've got a few added, you can use the up and down arrows to just quickly change the order. So top is the leftmost side of your Excel spreadsheet and the bottom will be the rightmost side. So just order them as you'd expect them to appear. And then you can do a little bit of additional stuff to just decide, do you want column names to generate from Matrix and just how you want the separator to look a little bit. Really, it's just how it visually looks in the export. I usually find labels nice or name, but I typically choose the comma separator, but that's totally up to you. Click save once you've chosen your export name, and then what you would do is depending on where is it? Oh, actually, I think they just opened it up. Perfect. So just go into your search, go to your preferred search. I'll just yank some quick results here. Let's do a few more than that. And all you do is just highlight your listings, click export here. And you can choose to export that way. Yeah, it's relatively easy. They don't complicate it too much. But it does give you, after you start your export, those options to choose which custom export you want, so you can arrange the columns exactly how you'd like. You don't have to try and fiddle with it in the actual results screen, which, you can certainly do. I'll quickly mention that because a lot of people aren't aware you can do this, and I think it's incredibly useful. So anytime you're on the results screen, just left click into the column bar here, and you can insert and remove columns. Same additional fields list that we were just looking at. And you can save this as a starting default, which is super, super useful. So just a heads up there. Definitely use this little cog icon to your advantage anytime you make customizations on any search criteria or results screen. You can set that as a default. All right. So yeah, I think that kind of covers some of those export options there. Another thing that you can do in Matrix obviously is the stats tab itself. So just at the top here, if you haven't spent a lot of time in here, I would recommend playing around with it. It's easier than it looks. I'll give you just a quick kind of run through of how to use it. But it's super, super flexible. Um, especially compared to, for example, we have our exposure platform as well. I find the exposure trends tab a lot harder to use than the matrix stats. Again, my email's in the chat there if you want to, mess around with it, and then give me a call or something. I'm happy to help try and, work through how to figure out to get your stat search to work properly. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of finagling or knowing which additional field to use. But when you first go into it, I've just clicked the stats tab. This is the first screen you'll see. There's a list of presets that are just created by Matrix. We don't do it. It's just set up as examples essentially in the system. And in some cases, they might be relevant to you, right? Some of them are pretty straightforward: historical sales by year, historical sales price trend, original price versus sold price. So there's some basic ones in there. You'll notice some are kind of like a singular stat and some are actually combinations, and you can create these as well. And then you've got your criteria screen. So once you've chosen which, stat report you'd like to generate, you can then choose, which area, which price range, status. There's obviously that additional field section as well. So if you wanted to add any fields you don't see in there, again, you can do a lot of stuff in here. Like, you could search and, look up your own statistics as an agent, or your own brokerage's statistics. It's really, really flexible. A little tip here, there's essentially no restrictions on the data you can pull. So it's not like it's hiding any data from any office or any agent from you. Just a heads up, there's we're here to teach the tools, and it's open for a reason. There's no restriction on that. So I'm just going to quickly jump over to our Customize tab, because this is where you can actually kind of create your own stat reports, which is probably what comes in the most handy. So this Customize tab, I'm just going to click over to it. And it just kind of has three super, super basic fields, which will expand a little bit as we fill it out. So first one, super straightforward. What is the time frame you are looking within? Like, do you want to generate data from the last year, from 2 years ago, 5 years ago? Do you want to set a custom one? Do you want to just look at everything? There's an all option as well. So once you've chosen that, for example, I could go, I want to see the last 12 months, since February 2024. And then we have our primary statistic. And again, this is not unlimited. There is only a certain number of things that is available in the list that the system can pull. This is partially limited by the number of required fields in Matrix. I'm sure you're all aware we're constantly in that battle between, adding additional required fields that make searching better, or adding too many, and then input is a nightmare. So in some cases, you may find that what you're trying to generate, maybe you're using a specific criteria field, you'll maybe get some bad results or unreliable results where you go, there's a lot missing here. And it might just be that that's not a required field, or it only recently became a required field. And the data is just not all there. So, for example, you can go through, take your primary stat. So let's just say sales number of for the last 12 months. There's also this advanced option here. So if you click this, it's going to expand things a little bit for you. And you can also pull in a secondary statistic. So we've got, number of sales. Maybe you want to just look at number of active listings against those number of sales, or whatever you want. This is where you can kind of mix and match and combine two stats in the same report. So when I've done that, it's going to give me a few options here. I can decide what kind of chart I want. It's going to always generate whatever chart you've chosen here. So again, column, line, area, etc. And then it's also going to generate just like the tabular data that you could export and pull into Excel and then do more complicated things with, for example, pivot tables and graphs and that kind of thing. Krista, are you heading out? Thanks for
I am, yeah, but I've
appreciate it.
got Rebecca here. She's gonna help sign off.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Thomas. Appreciate
No
it.
problem. All right. Yeah. So as I was saying, it will generate both of those. In this case, I'll just stick with column here. There is a group by option, and this list will change drastically depending on the stat that you choose, as well as the time frame you choose. So in this case, all I've got to choose from is month in this case, but again, this will be different depending on what you've chosen. I can then go through, I could choose my property type. I could set myself a price range. And again, price ranges work like this in the system where I'm going to put in a hyphen between it. Or for example, if I wanted to do anything above a certain price, I'd put a plus sign after it. Or anything after, anything below, I can put a negative sign or a hyphen after it. So there we've got our price range. And then I could go in and add any of my, regions or additional fields. Once you're set and you've got all of your, criteria fields added, you've put in your time frame and your stat. If you've chosen a secondary stat, put that in. Obviously, it's not necessary. I could, hide it and not use it at all. Click generate. It's going to pull those stats for me. So I've got my column graph here. And if you didn't like what it displayed, you can just change this and regenerate it. Anytime you make any change to your report settings, it'll let you generate a new one. And again, this is something that you could export, send to your client, or use however you'd like. Here's the tabular data. Got my CSV file export option there. So really, really easy. I think the power really comes when I get a question or I get an issue brought to me, and then we can actually build it in the system. I'm not a realtor. I'm not sure what you're looking to generate, but reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I know this system relatively well in terms of what fields are available. So usually we can get that figured out. So once you have something that you like, and perhaps you are, again, I'm not sure if it's all agents today or if we maybe have some admins or assistants or anything like that, but maybe you work with an agent and they would like some reports generated on a regular basis. And in some cases, perhaps you need to do some custom ones. You could build something like I've done here, whatever you need using the options available. And then you could click the third tab, Save, and you could actually create this as a new system preset on your account so that you don't need to go through and do this every time. And you don't even need to have, you could even save criteria if you wanted to, but you could have it set as just a preset. And then you just click the preset and select generate. Makes your life super, super easy. Save a bunch of time every month. So. Any questions about the stats tab here before I jump ahead? All right. Sounds good. Okay, I think that pretty much is going to cover us for Matrix, the last thing I think is probably worth mentioning, just for people that may not really know it's available, um, you can actually pull some of your listing stats in Matrix as well. So this is specifically for your listings. So I've gone into the My Matrix tab at the top here, and again, this might be repeat information for some of you. I'm sure that um, you know, I'm not the only one that's looked in here. I should actually see if I can pull into an account that's got some listings active, but this could probably cover it enough. So this drop down here has a whole bunch of options available. So you can filter by, your pre-active listings, your editable listings, any incomplete drafts you have. So this is actually an alternative view for your listings to the listing manager, because you'll be able to see everything from incomplete all the way to sold and expired. They also have, for example, the hit counters. So kind of every time your listing has been, looked at, brought up, sent in auto emails, that kind of thing. Um, there's also, all of the additional options in the action bar. So I'll just quickly show you here in the search. So in the search, you've probably noticed, but there's this consistent action bar that appears at the bottom of the search. This action bar, if you look out for it, actually exists pretty much everywhere in Matrix. So it exists in your carts and your save searches. It exists in that My Listings folder. So if you needed to, you wanted to do any exports based on your listing statistics, your past sales or anything like that, you can absolutely generate that using the actions bar, which will just be available right at the bottom there when you're looking at your listings in the My Listings section. So yeah, lots of great tools there. Um, Oftentimes I do get questions about all of the different hit counter columns in that My Listings section. So if you're looking at your listings and you go to that hit counter display option that I was looking at, I'll just show it one more time, this My Hit Counters, and you're looking at something and you're like, that's a really high number, or I don't understand what that column is referring to. Shoot me a message, give me a call. Again, just if you call the association number, my extension, I'll put it in the chat here. Uh, I'm happy to just walk you through any of those. We do get those questions fairly often. Most of the time, it's a pretty easy explanation. There's different hit counter for is it the first time they viewed it? Did they favorite it? Did they, there's all these different things based on the One Home Client portal that appears in the hit counter statistics. So yeah. All right, so we're not quite finished yet. I've got a little bit more that I want to show all of you. So I'm actually going to jump back to our association dashboard here really quick. And I'm just going to quickly jump into our home price index tool. So I mentioned that although those reports look really nice, it's not any unique data. The data from our market stats and buyer surveys and all that stuff is being pulled from our other systems. So we looked at some of the matrix data that they're pulling from those generative reports they create every month through Matrix. And the other side of that is that home price index or benchmark pricing model that you see everywhere. And I just want to talk a little bit about that because it is kind of a unique thing and it works differently than all of the other models that you're used to. Again, median average pricing. It's not the same as that. So, as a quick example, if you're looking at average price, you're basically, month over month average price is going to look at all of the sold properties in an area for a property type in a given month. And these can be really skewed if, for example, you have an area that's in the middle of kind of a transition. Maybe they've got some properties that are original and some properties that have been, completely torn down and, rebuilt, or maybe just, extensively remodeled. And you could have a situation where maybe you have a property that sells way outside of the norm. And then when you're looking at kind of these shorter term, monthly statistics, it's going to jump all over the place. And now this doesn't matter as much when you look at like a year or 5 years or 10 years, but in these short time frames, average and median pricing does not work very well. And this is kind of where the home price index model comes in. So this is actually something that Korea offers. They've been doing it in BC for a very long time. For example, the Greater Vancouver Board has had this for I think 20 years. We got it while I was with the association. So in the last 5 years, I can't remember if I think it was 2019. But it's something that is more, new to us. But what it is basically they apply HPI to, any association's MLS. They take all of the sold data historically for the system. Typically, they do have a start date. In our case, it's January 2005 is the earliest kind of reliable, consistent data they could pull for us. Pretty far back, not as far back as, Vancouver, for example, but so in our case, it'll take all of the sold data and it applies the HPI algorithm to that sold data. And if you want to get into the nitty-gritty, I can include some links on specifically how HPI works and how it was built. But how the function actually works is that it takes a look at all those sold properties. It breaks them down by what kind of features available on those properties. It breaks them into property types and regions, sub areas, and it creates like a virtual home or a typical home that doesn't actually exist in real life, but represents the most typical features and size and everything for that area. So like specifically, let's say we look at townhouses in Vernon. Um, it's going to go here are all of the Vernon, city of Vernon townhouses that have ever sold. what that's what it's actually averaging. It's actually looking at what are the most typical features that appear, and then they actually build out like a feature sheet for a fake home, and then that's what they base their stats model off of. So instead of it being you've got 100 sales in a month, and you average the sold price for all those sales in townhouses, and then you've got a couple that are way outside, and it skews the price of average price of townhouses in the month of January by significant value. This prevents that completely because this typical home model that they're using and they update every month is based off of not 50 or 60 or 100 solds in a month. It's actually based off of thousands and thousands of sold properties over the course of, 20 years. And in some cases, it could be the sold data for the same property that's been sold multiple times and how that property changed over time with any renovations. So when you look at just like a month of data changes, that's like a drop in the bucket for HPI. It's a little tiny piece of the total number of sold features that made up that virtual home. So, for example, if I look at this report in HPI called the Benchmark Descriptions report, this link at the bottom of any page on HPI, you can pull this exact report if you go into the HPI tool with me. If I click on that, you can actually go see what those typical virtual properties look like for the month of February 2025, because this model will adjust slightly every single month as new sold data gets input from, this month. It's always a month behind, obviously. So, when you're looking at, oh, why is it not running this report? Interesting. I'll have to look at that. I'm not sure if it's if there's something up here. Of course, that's perfect for a training session. I was just looking at this a week ago and it was working. So I'll reach out to our Korea contact and see if they maybe have an issue with their link. It's actually linked to a Korea page, so not much I can do there. But you'll have to bear with me that that does exist and it does have all those virtual properties on it. And it's really just a reference sheet. I'll give you a quick look. Oh, actually, it's just really slow. All good. No worries. It's still here. So it's a download. It's going to pull in an Excel sheet. Here we go. I think it might be my computer. I'm a little slow today. I think it might be my connection. Let me just pull this over. Oops. It does not like me. Okay. So this is kind of what we're looking at. I'm just going to leave enable editing off here. I don't need to actually go in. But it's just this enormous report. It's going to be really hard to kind of get an idea of what you're looking at until you start using some of the filters. But I'll just show you here at the top. So for example, they've got a virtual or benchmark property for literally every situation. So is it all sales in the entire association for example, one story or two story or apartment? Or do you want to look at, a specific larger region like the Central Okanagan? Or do you want to drill down even further and look at, a specific sub area for one story? And for each of these, you'll notice that they kind of have the same attributes list. So, and again, this is going to be a little different kind of based on which property type you're looking for. And in some cases, if the area is too small or if there's too few sales in a really, really, small area. Again, we've got areas as small as, Dawson Creek and stuff like that in our region. HPI struggles as that gets smaller and smaller. But this kind of gives you an idea of what that most typical one-story home looks like in the Enderby Grand Rod area. And this is actually what is used when it generates the benchmark models. So again, no average pricing. Instead, it's benchmark pricing, and it's used month to month, so much less than the other models. In the long run, they all trend essentially the same, and you can track that. They all look the same the further out you go. But in these short time frames, HPI is fantastic. If you're curious and you want to try using it a little bit, and again, I know some of you have probably used this or maybe even used this extensively, but I'm just trying to cover everyone that hasn't. It's really easy to set up. Again, you can choose your areas. It does include all of our regions, including the amalgamated ones now. And we do have data going back for those areas too, which is cool. You got your property type selection. So again, composite is just a combination of everything, or you can selectively choose, single family, one story, two story. And then we've got our area. And again, the further you go down, it's going to drill down further. You've got your entire interior BC area. You've got your central, Kamloops, Kootenay, etc. The one thing I'll point out is that sometimes you'll notice that you'll not have a available report for a specific sub area, and that's going back to those areas that are perhaps too small or lack the number of sales to make up the minimum for HPI to be able to be applied. I can't recall what the minimum number of sales is. It's not super, super high, but the system just, if it's too low, it's unreliable and it won't have it in the system. So if you're looking for one and it's missing, that would be the reason. You can always ask us if you are surprised or you think it should be there. Obviously it's possible there could be an error, but yeah, let us know. So you can go through and make your selection. You can select multiple if you'd like. Click apply, and it's going to generate the HPI stats. Again, it's based on those benchmark homes, those virtual homes. Right now, we're looking at it with the HPI value, which is a little bit trickier. It does require a little bit of math to be done. It's essentially the base value that gets applied at the beginning of the HPI model, and it's the value that they use to determine benchmark price. But you can actually get the system to do the calculation for you. Just choose benchmark price instead. It also makes it a little bit easier usually to view your graphs. So in this case, it kind of separated them out a little bit because it is by price instead of that model ID. So for example, for any of these points on the graph, I can just hover over and see, in August 2014, what was the average price of a single family home in Ashcroft. And this is again using the benchmark model, not average pricing. So yeah, how this system works is it's the same data that you can generate using three different, you know, data types. So you got your line graphs, your line chart, you've got your bar graphs, and then you've got your tabular data. And it's the same data for all three. If you decide to change your, customizations here, it will overwrite all three just because it's just trying to show you the data in three different methods. But yeah, so that's where the rest of the data comes from when you look at those buyer survey or market stats reports and you see benchmark price. Anytime you see benchmark price, that's what it is. It's not average pricing model or anything like that. And it will be more accurate in the short term, especially when you're dealing with larger areas, areas with plenty of solds. It just becomes even better. So. All right. Well, I said I'd leave a little bit of time here for questions, and I see we're coming up on an hour. And I see we've lost a few people, which is totally fine. I know you guys are super, super busy. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. I'll open it up here for questions in case anyone's been patiently waiting to have their one question answered while I chat away. Can we sort by category, such as lakeshore? No, the system isn't set up for that amount of detail, unfortunately, Barb. Um, it just can't go that deep. So there's some things you can do. For example, there is this benchmark comparison tab, which basically allows you to pull all of the features that are available in those benchmark homes into the system. So here, I'll just take one, for example. And if I go into these characteristics selections, you can see waterfront is one of the available options. So you can see if you look at the most typical home in, just as an example, Aberdeen, will this typical home have will it be a waterfront property? Chances are, in most areas, the answer is no, because the only way it would appear as waterfront yes is if the majority of the sales for that property type in that area were waterfront. And if they weren't, then the typical home would not be considered waterfront. It's really based, that's the part that's based on an average, is the creation of those virtual homes. So it can't do that because it doesn't actually use the data in that method, if that makes sense, Barb. Thank you. Good question. Wait here a couple minutes just in case anyone's still typing out a question. Again, I know sometimes I threw so much information at you. Uh, you can definitely shoot me an email or something if something comes up after a question comes up. There is more training for HPI. I can come back and do an entire hour just on HPI. and I can do that. It will be fairly similar to some of the stuff I talked about today already, but they also have a great help guide. This is actually put together by Korea. So if you want to kind of get their perspective on some of this, they don't go quite into as much depth on, what HPI is and why you should use it, unless you go to Korea's website directly. And I think you can get it through the resources here. But if you had any questions on using one of the tabs or what you need to do to get started, this is a great place to start as well. There's videos and screenshot walkthroughs. But yeah, like I said, I can also do something similar. In a session, it's typically about an hour as well. But I also spend a portion of that time explaining the system in a similar way that I did today. Thanks, Barb. Great. They've all been really great. I appreciate the time. And yeah, I hope you got something out of that. Maybe something you didn't use before. I'm sure most of you are pretty up on most of this anyways, but um, yeah, thanks for having me. Of
Yes, thank you so much, Thomas, for taking the time out of your day for everyone.
course, of course.
Michelle and Christo say thank you as well.
Thank you. Thanks.
And you said you were recording it as well, Thomas?
I did start the recording, so
Okay.
it's currently recording. I can see the red dot. So when we end, it should take some time, and then I was told to record it to the computer. So that's what.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Have a good day.